Billionaire catches Nanny breastfeeding his son. Her response changes everything. Hey, beautiful souls, your support absolutely lights up my world. That little subscribe button, it's pure magic for bringing you more heartwarming stories. Here's my promise. I personally read and reply to every comment because I genuinely love connecting with you. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from right now. I can't wait to virtually meet you. Ready for today's extraordinary tale? Let's dive in together. The ancient floorboards of the mansion groaned beneath Richard Hale's Italian leather shoes as he burst through the nursery door, his chest heaving from his frantic rush up the marble staircase. The sight before him struck him like a physical blow. Alina, her dark skin luminous in the amber lamplight, cradled his newborn son against her breast, her uniform slightly unbuttoned, the child's tiny mouth drawing sustenance from her body. Time crystallized into a single, horrifying moment. The grandfather clock in the hallway seemed to pause mid-tick. The very air in the room grew thick and suffocating. What the hell is this? The words erupted from Richard's throat like shards of broken glass. Alina's entire body went rigid, but her arms instinctively tightened around the infant, forming a protective cocoon. The baby, sensing the sudden tension, let out a soft whimper and pressed closer to the warmth of her chest. "Sir," she began, her voice barely audible, like wind through dry leaves. "Don't you sir me!" Richard's face blazed crimson, veins bulging at his temples. His perfectly pressed navy suit, wrinkled from his desperate sprint through the house, hung on his trembling frame like expensive armor that had failed to protect him from this moment. "What are you doing to my son?" The baby stirred at the harsh sound, his tiny fists clenching as he let out another whimper. Alina's hand moved instinctively to stroke his downy head, her touch feather-light. "He was crying," she whispered, her words floating between them like fragile soap bubbles. "Crying?" Richard's voice cracked like a whip. "And you think the answer is this?" His finger shot out, pointing at her exposed breast with the accusation of a loaded weapon. "You're feeding him." Alina's eyes dropped to the baby's face, peaceful now in sleep. He was hungry. The simple truth of those 3 words ignited something primal and ugly in Richard's chest. His voice erupted into a roar that shook the crystal figurines on the mahogany dresser. "Hungry? You dare?" His fist connected with the doorframe with a sound like thunder. "You will make my son black!" The words hung in the air like poison gas, seeping into every corner of the nursery. The baby twitched at the violence of the sound, and Alina's arms became a fortress around his small body. "Say something," Richard demanded, his breath coming in ragged, was no louder than a prayer. "He has no mother. And that gives you the right?" Richard's words came out strangled. "Do you know who I am? Do you know what people will say if they find out?" The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Richard began to pace, his footsteps echoing off the hardwood floors like gunshots. "You lost your place, Alina. You were brought here to clean, to serve, not to," his voice cracked like ice breaking, "not to touch him like that." The baby whimpered again, a sound so small and vulnerable it seemed to pierce the very walls of the mansion. Alina hushed him, her voice a gentle stream of comfort, rocking him with movements as natural as breathing. "Don't you dare look at me like that," Richard snarled, his finger trembling as he pointed at her. "Don't you dare act like you know better than his father." "I know he was hungry," Alina murmured, her words carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "That's not your call." Richard's shout could have shattered windows. "That will never be your call." Tears gathered in Alina's eyes like morning dew, but her voice remained steady. She pressed a gentle kiss to the child's head, her lips lingering on his soft skin. Richard slammed his palm against the wall, the sound reverberating through the house. "You want me to thank you? To praise you? You think this is mercy? This is betrayal." Alina's voice was soft as silk when she responded. "He doesn't know betrayal, only hunger and comfort." "Comfort?" Richard's laugh was bitter as burnt coffee. "What will happen when he grows up? When people whisper? When they say the great Richard Hale let his son be fed by?" He cut himself off, his voice breaking with the weight of his own prejudice. "He'll grow strong," Alina whispered, her faith unshakable as bedrock. Richard's jaw clenched so tightly it ached. "You think you can shame me with silence? You think by not answering, you make me the villain?" The baby had settled now, his sucking becoming slower and more peaceful. Alina wiped a small drop of milk from his cheek with the tenderness of a mother's touch. Richard's voice dropped to a rough whisper. Do you love him? Is that it? Do you imagine he's yours? Alina's throat tightened, but her voice remained clear. He belongs to no one but himself. The words hit Richard like a physical blow, causing him to stumble backward. For a moment, he searched desperately for something to strike back with, but his voice faltered. He was born with nothing, Alina whispered, her voice carrying the weight of profound sadness. Not even a mother's touch, so I gave him mine. Richard's fists trembled at his sides like autumn leaves in a storm. You had no right. No, she agreed softly. But I had milk, and he had need. The silence that followed was deafening. The baby gave a faint sigh and drifted into peaceful sleep, his tiny chest rising and falling in perfect rhythm. Richard pressed his palms against his face, groaning as if in physical pain. God, what have you done? Alina cradled the child closer, her rocking motion never ceasing. She offered no answer, no justification. You will not replace her, Richard's voice cracked one final time, hoarse with fury and confusion. You will not. Alina kissed the baby's forehead with infinite tenderness, then lifted her eyes to meet Richard's gaze. Her look was sharp as a blade, cutting through all his defenses. Replace her? Her voice carried a new strength, like steel wrapped in silk. How could I? She gave her life to bring him here, and you dishonor her by turning her son into a trophy you're too afraid to hold. Richard staggered as if struck. How dare you? How dare I? Alina's tone lashed out like a whip. You barge in screaming about color while your child starves. What did you do when his cries filled this house last night? You poured yourself another glass and shut the door. Richard's jaw tightened, but before he could speak, Alina continued, her words flowing like a river that had finally broken through a dam. You wear that suit like it makes you a father. It doesn't. A father is presence. A father is touch. And right now, I am more of one than you are. And it burns you, doesn't it? You watch your mouth? Richard managed to choke out. Alina's laugh was bitter as winter wind. Watch my mouth? My mouth is the reason your son isn't still crying from hunger. My body, yes, this body you sneer at, keeps him alive. You think milk cares about skin? You think his little lips know the difference between mine and hers? He knows only warmth, comfort, love. The baby stirred at her raised voice, so she softened immediately, pressing him closer before turning her blazing gaze back to Richard. You shout, you'll make my son black as if it's poison. Do you hear yourself? You speak like hate is stronger than hunger, like fear is stronger than love. You call yourself a man of power, yet a newborn terrifies you more than any boardroom rival. Richard's throat felt like sandpaper. You don't understand. No, you don't understand, Alina cut him off, her voice trembling with the weight of buried grief. I held a child of my own once, a little girl with curls and eyes like the dawn. I buried her before her first birthday. Do you know what it does to a mother to lower her child into the earth? Do you know what it's like to have milk but no baby to drink it? Richard blinked rapidly, the devastating truth of her words forcing his gaze downward. When your wife died, I saw the same emptiness in his eyes that haunted mine, and I swore he would not feel it. Not while I still had breath. So yes, I fed him. Not to shame you, not to defy you, but to save him from the silence that nearly killed me. Richard's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, his shoulders sinking under the weight of understanding. You think I want to be his mother? Alina whispered. I can't be, but someone has to care until his father learns how. Someone has to hold him when all you know is how to hold your pride. The words landed like physical blows. Richard's chest heaved as he struggled to breathe, to speak, to find any response. His hands, once trembling with rage, now shook with something deeper. Regret that cut to his very soul. You scream about skin, Alina continued, her voice quieter now but steady as stone. But skin is all you've ever given him. Expensive suits, soft blankets, pretty walls, all surface, no soul. He doesn't need a billionaire. He needs a father. And right now, he doesn't have one. Richard's face crumpled like paper in flames. His fists fell open at his sides, powerless. He looked at his son, truly looked at him, seeing the tiny chest rising and falling against Alina's arm, and for the first time, tears blurred his vision. Stop hiding behind money. Behind race, behind fear, Alina said, her own voice breaking now. Look at him. He doesn't see black or white. He doesn't see rich or poor. He only sees who comes when he cries. And today, that wasn't you. The silence that followed was suffocating. Richard's knees buckled, and he sank onto the edge of the bed, burying his face in his hands as sobs racked his body. God help me, he whispered through his fingers. I don't know how. Alina looked down at the sleeping baby, then back at the broken man before her. Then learn, she said simply, before he learns to live without you. Richard's shoulders shook with the force of his weeping. For a man who had commanded business empires and bent the world to his will, he looked impossibly small now, broken open by truths he could no longer deny. Alina rose gracefully, still cradling the child against her chest. She didn't wait for thanks or apologies. She didn't need them. Her silence now was different, no longer submission, but quiet triumph. Richard lifted his head, his eyes red and raw, watching as she moved toward the door with his son safe in her arms. And for the first time since his wife's death, he understood what real strength looked like: quiet, unyielding, and nothing like his own. The house had grown quieter in the days that followed, but it was not the silence of absence. It was the hush of transformation. Richard found himself standing by the crib one evening, his son's impossibly small fingers wrapped around his own. He had meant only to check that the child was breathing, but when those blue eyes opened and held his gaze, trusting, fragile, infinite, something inside Richard's chest shattered completely. Tears came before he could stop them, streaming down his face as he sank into the chair beside the crib. He pulled his son close, clutching the tiny body against his chest as sobs racked through him like earthquakes. For years he had built walls of steel and pride, but they crumbled in seconds beneath the weight of that tiny, beating heart. Alina appeared quietly in the doorway, watching without judgment. She saw not the billionaire, not the tyrant who had screamed at her days before, but simply a man broken open by love he had been too afraid to feel. And as Richard wept into his son's downy hair, he whispered through his tears, "I'm here now. I won't fail you again."